But what you're about to hear, though I have a definite faith in my observations about our estuary, plus the fact that research often varies like size, lifespan, and even coloration from place to place, or estuary to estuary as it would be, nothing should be taken as written in stone, except one thing. Though obviously edited, every photo of every organism in this program and any other program I create is an actual organism of the Barnegat estuary. And that's important because it gives our estuary a specific identity. These are the most common forage fish you're going to find in the saline waters of the Barnegat estuary. While some are merely juveniles taking advantage of the estuary as a nursery for its rich food chains and protection, like the mossbunker, mullet, heron, others, like the killie family, spearing and sticklebacks, are year-round residents. And though none will grow much larger than 6 inches in a single season, by the end of that season, they're going to represent tons and tons of biomass, and an indispensable link between the primary producers, like grasses and plankton, from which they've grown, and the major predators that depend on them for existence and growth, like striped bass, bluefish, weakfish, wading birds, shorebirds, almost everything we hold dear about the estuary. And each has its own individual description. First, the most common fish you're ever going to catch in a seine net, the Atlantic silversides, Menidia menidia, commonly called spearing. Has a pearl belly, translucent tail, and a silver band that runs the length of the lateral line, for which it's named. Lives 2 years, reaches a length of 6 inches. But it's not the only silversides in the estuary. Often overlooked, there's also the inland silversides, or Menidia beryllinia. Similar in appearance to the Atlantic silversides, but seems to favor the lower salinities of the tributaries. Reaches a size of 4 inches, distinguishable by a shorter, broader anal fin with 16 rays, rather than the 24 to 26 rays of the Atlantic silverside. Then there's the white mullet, Euglocurima. Swims in from the continental shelf as larva, has a thick, elongated, silvery white body with a bluish-green back. Though it may live 19 years and reach a size of 20 inches or more, only its first season will be spent in our estuary growing from a larva to adulthood at about 8 inches. Larval mossbunkers, too, swim in from the open ocean. Have a large head with a spot behind their gills, a wide compressed body, greenish back, and spotted silver sides. Grow from a mere 10 millimeters when they arrive to about 5 inches when they leave. Have a lifespan of 8 years and may eventually grow to 15 inches or more. The first cousin of the mossbunker, the alewife heron, Alosa pseudoharengus, also spend their first season in our estuary. But unlike the mossbunker, they're born here in our tributaries. Silvery in color with a grayish-green back, have a wide compressed body with a small tapered head and tail, and a sharp fluted belly. Live 9 or 10 years, may reach a size of 13 inches, but will only grow to a possible 5 inches when they leave the bay in the fall. But unfortunately, their historically immense numbers have decreased to dangerously low numbers. Next, the most common forage fish you probably won't catch many of in a seine, the common killie, or as it's often called, a mummychug, Fundulus heteroclitus. The most numerous of the 5 species of the killie family that I've found here favors the less hospitable habitats of muddy inshore trenches and mosquito ditches, has a broad head and body with a compressed tail. Adult males in breeding coloration have yellow bellies and fins with black and white speckles and bars like the one in this picture, while the females are more of a drabbish brownish or greenish with a few dark bars on the side. Live about 4 years, reach sizes of 4 to 6 inches, but they occur throughout the estuary all year long, never leaving the bay. Though not as numerous as the mummychug, the striped killie, Fundulus majalis, is by far the largest of the family, having actually been recorded at almost 8 inches. Has a more streamlined shape with a flat tapered head and flat stomach. Has horizontal stripes in the female and vertical bars in the male with a yellowish coloration in the springtime. But because they favor higher salinities and sandy bottom, you're really only going to catch them in our lower estuary. Because it's similar in appearance to juvenile mummychugs, and favors the same habitat, the rainwater killie, Luciana parva, often gets overlooked, when in fact it represents one of the smallest members of the killie family. Though said to reach 2 inches, I've never seen them any larger than 1.25 inches. Brownish in color, with a more compressed body than mummychugs, and males often show orange-colored fins like the one in the picture. But the dead giveaway for the rainwater killie is the large dark scale pattern you won't see in common killies. The most attractive member of the killie family is the sheepshead minnow, Cyprinodon variegatus. Deep-bodied with a maximum size of 2 inches or more, although again I've never seen them any bigger than 1.25 inches. Show dark rectangular bars on a silvery white body with a dark olive back on non-breeding males and females, but breeding males light up like a Christmas tree with bright steel blue shoulder and body and fins mixed with yellow and orange. Lifespan of maybe 3 years. A great aquarium fish. Favors the same general inshore habitat as mummy chugs and rainwater killies. The banded killie, Fundulus diaphanus, seem to show their greatest numbers in the lower salinities of our tributaries, brackish waters, or middle estuary. Though often confused with common killies, the mummy chug, their more streamlined body and flat tapered head can tell them apart pretty good. Both males and females show a series of dark vertical bars over a yellowish coloration and a dark olive back. But breeding males, like other members of this family, light up with beautiful shades of yellow, green, and blue, like the one in this photo. Grow to about 5 inches, live approximately 4 years. The most unusual forage fish, the 4-spined stickleback, Apeltes quadracus, is the most numerous of 2 sticklebacks I've found in our estuary, the other being the 3-spined stickleback. Favors shallow, grassy bottoms, so it's often caught in the same with the other forage fish we already mentioned. Has a fairly compressed fusiform shape with a sharply tapered head and caudal peduncle. That's the base of the tail. Overall brown body, molded with black spots and cream to yellow belly and chin. Up to 4 sharp dorsal spines on the back obviously give it its name. Grow to a little over 2 inches, live about 3 years. Last, but not necessarily least, the bay anchovy, Anchoa michelli, often called rainfish for the habit of dippling the surface of the water like raindrops. Known to be the most numerous forage fish of the middle Atlantic estuaries, but being immensely outnumbered by Atlantic silversides, that just doesn't seem to be the case in the Barnegat estuary. At best, their appearance in numbers each year is inconsistent. Have an elongate, laterally compressed body of medium depth with a blunted nose and a long upturned lower jaw. Except for a silvery head, belly, and lateral line, they're pretty much translucent with a slight reddish tint. Have a similar life cycle as an Atlantic silverside, live 2 years and reach a size of 4 inches, though they're only going to make it to 2 inches by the time they leave the estuary in the fall. Now, are there other forage fish in the bay? Of course there are, not to mention invertebrate forage like crabs, clams, shrimp, worms, all primary and secondary consumers too. But we're talking about forage fish here, and I see 2 different kinds. Species of opportunity, no predator's going to pass up a free meal, and foundation species that are, as the word implies, the fundamental link to the historical populations of major predators that depend on them. And these are, I believe, most of those fundamental species. But they all have their own individual life cycles and importance. Take, for example, what's probably the most important of these species, the Atlantic silversides, what we commonly call spearing, what I like to call our ultimate forage fish. With a 2-year lifespan, the young of last year, which are now 5 to 6 inch adults, begin their yearly exodus into the bay around the end of February. For the next few months, these massive concentrations will slowly circulate the estuary, moving throughout the bay, up into the tributaries, and back again, breeding as they go. Then, by the end of June, early July, they make their exodus back out of the bay, back to the inlet surf and ocean. But they leave behind the young of the year. Now, for the rest of the season, these massive populations will dominate the lower and middle Barnegat estuary. At only 3/4 inch to 1.5 inches when the breeders left, by the flood tides of late August and September reaching a size of 3 to 3.5 inches, they'll create backlogs extinction areas near inlets so great that they actually roar like a rainstorm. Then they too make their exodus into the inlet surf and ocean. And though they're still going to remain numerous, possibly right into December, depending on water temperature, that's the life cycle of our ultimate forage fish. Now, you could say that their life cycle represents everything we need to know about them. But there are 2 conditions of existence in our estuary and every place else, actually. You're either alive or you give life to something else. And you can't disconnect the 2. And that's the fundamental definition of a food chain. Now let's see how the silverside's life cycle fits into that food chain. For any forage fish, there's three things on your mind: a food source, self-defense, and a habitat to breed. And with the coming of spring, estuaries are that place. The water's warm, grass beds grow, and most important, nutrients and plankton explode. The spearing now have their food source. Now they're said to reach as much as 6 inches, though most may be more like 4 to 5 inches. But think about it for a second. It's spring. What other forage fish are there of this size in massive schools that circulate throughout the water column of the lower and middle estuary? At this time of year, there aren't any. They now become the major food source for the third level of the food chain, what's commonly called tertiary consumers, that now follow them into the bay. The most important of which, for me at least, are the most visible, are commercial and recreational fisheries, like striped bass, bluefish, and weakfish.